Undercover for so long, what have I become? Empty, desolate, I waste away in the bitterness, in the broken dreams in which I always seek my identity that you stole from me. What a nice design, Dr. Frankenstein, indeterminate, unidentified strangers for so long. Tell me where I belong. I'm not gonna fall in.
Yeah, it's our second podcast. Just wanted to say thanks for watching. Hope we start to get some following. This is my buddy Infinite here. He's a member of DonorChildren.com, which is the free social network for donor-conceived people. And my name's Matt Dorn. I founded DonorChildren.com in 2013 because I wanted to help other people who are donor-conceived like me, conceived from sperm, egg, or embryo donors, to connect and help each other through the process, and also to help people match biological family. So on our first episode, we covered the first 4 stages of what it is to be donor conceived, and we're going to cover the second of 4, so the last 4 stages. But before we get into that, we'll just catch up a little bit, Infinite. So yeah, I got a fancy little makeshift stage here at my house. I'm trying to look a little better than last week. But
Yeah, I like the updates, man. It kind of reminds me of I've seen African Americans they have a shirt. I don't know if you've ever seen it before, but it says something like 1 billion sold, and it has a picture of a slave ship, and then it also has the barcode. Yeah.
oh, that's interesting. Yeah. Well, so tell us a little bit about how you've been, because as of this morning, I think you weren't sure you wanted to do a second show because you're struggling, just because it's a hard journey we go through. So whatever you feel like sharing, if you want to share that, and then we'll go on from there.
Yeah, I appreciate you being flexible with me, because I kind of went to a dark place, kind of in my mind, over the last few days, and I kind of thought to myself, well, I could just, I actually work abroad, and so I'm not around family a lot where I work, so I kind of have the ability to just say, okay, well, this thing in my life is confusing. It doesn't make sense. Let me just focus on my individual life and kind of forget about this whole donor conception thing, since
Right.
it's bothering me, and I'll just kind of compartmentalize like that. And that's why I said that, hey, look, man, I just it doesn't make sense to me now. I want to go back over the steps with you again, because I think it was step number 4 that I'm kind of got hung up on, because
Which was what am I seeking?
yes, my what am I seeking has kind of changed slightly, and that's got me all mixed up, I think.
Yeah, I got you. Yeah, for me, going through the 8 stages, yeah, it took me years. So what you've done in 1 year is extremely fast. And everybody's story is different, but yeah, in the span of a year, you've had your awakening, you've taken the red pill, and you took a step further to search out for your biological father and your family. And just maybe a month and a half ago, you made your first contact with your biological dad, and that's pretty amazing to all accomplish that in a year's time frame. And you did it. You held it together pretty well. I enjoyed going through that with you. But yeah, if you need to take a break, I totally understand, because I know what that's like. So it took me years to get get through all that. So,
Yeah, I'd kind of been telling myself all along. I'd been saying, you know, the holy grail for me was if I ever found out my dad's name, if I had a name to my lineage. And then I thought, wow, and then if I just could meet him one time, sort of like Greg Wyatt. Maybe we'll have a chance later to talk about Greg Wyatt, who was one of
we're
our
going to have Greg on the
forerunners.
show.
Great, yeah. Well, his journey ended with him being at his father's doorstep, and he actually wrote a book about my, you know,
Demons at my doorstep.
demons at my doorstep. Yeah, and I kind of pictured myself like that. If nothing more, if I could just, you know, shake his hand, you know, be at his doorstep, say thank you for giving me life, and then move on like Greg Wyatt did. I thought that would be, you know, then I would have reached my goal. And so I did that. I met my dad for dinner, and I thanked him, and I shook his hand. We gave each other a hug. And then I had to be honest with myself and admit over these last few days that it never did click. You know, that thing, that missing piece that I thought I would find, and that sense of closure that, oh man, this was what I was missing all my life. Yes, this is it.
Yeah.
You know, there was never that click moment. And I think that's what disappointed me more than anything. That and my sister rejecting me.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, when I first contacted my father, he cut me off after 4 emails, but and it hit me hard. And then my half sister rejected me very, very strongly, very intensely via email.
Okay.
And that was really hard. And my half brother made death threats to kill my whole family.
Wow.
So I had to deal with that while I had my first child, who was an infant. And now my half brother I just contacted has my mailing address. So
Wow.
that was pretty tough. And then what I had to do, it took me 4 years of persistence. Once a year on Father's Day, I would send my father an email saying Happy Father's Day, or sometimes a little spiteful because I was feeling, you know, emotionally a little spiteful. But then over the years, I've softened, and I started to show more like grace and compassion, and just try to be grateful for anything I got. So he started to come around once my grandmother was starting to die, and she lived with my dad. And once she passed last September in 2017, he had a change where he was open to communication, and I was in a much better emotional place and healthier and not afraid like I was 4 years ago. And oh man, was it? Yeah, 4 years ago. So I mean, it took 4 years for my dad and I to get to this point where we talk twice a week now, and we're really getting to know each other over the past year of talking twice a week. And you know, we're going to go see him in a couple weeks. So I'm pretty excited. We'll be in Kansas City.
Okay.
So, yeah, I just encourage you to just hang in there. It's hard because it'd be great if you were just like welcomed with open arms and the whole family embraced you. And that does happen. I have a friend who that did happen with, and who's also from KUMC, David Brown. He was on VH1 Swab Stories with me, and he found his dad in Colorado. And yeah, they've visited him a couple times already and taken their kids, and they're all super talented musicians. They're all jamming out, you know, on guitars. It's kind of an idyllic fantasy if you think about it, but it's amazing how they're all similarly musically gifted. 2 of them are going to college for music. So I think it's crazy that you met your dad, you know, almost like a hole in one. You got like a hole in one, but the hole in one's not going to produce those missing, that wholeness. And that probably has to take some time for him to adjust to this whole situation, and for you and your siblings, his children from his marriage. you know. So I just want to encourage you not to lose hope and just not to worry about getting it all figured out right away, you know.
Yeah, I appreciate
And
that.
like I said
And
earlier on the text, you know, like it's good to be balanced, find things you like to do, go to work every day, try to focus on what's most important in your life first, which is your job, your family, um, things that really matter. And then beyond that, what you can do can give as you're able to this situation. Because for a period of my life, I think I put my family second, and it really took me to a bad place. Um, and I learned some hard lessons during that to make sure that I first take care of my wife and children, and you know, put food on the table and keep my sanity in check. So,
sure,
but
you know, I want to talk about that. What I mean by that click
yeah,
moment,
yeah,
a little,
sure.
because I actually did experience it when I first found out that I was donor conceived. I did have a click moment.
Mm-hmm.
Because I thought, okay, well, this explains everything. You know, this explains why I didn't feel like I connected with my father. This explains why I always felt like I was so much different than the rest of my family. This explains that weird sense that I've always had that something's going on, that suspicion that I'm being lied to about something. It checks so many boxes when I found out I was donor conceived. And that's kind of what led me to thinking that I would have another click moment when I met my father.
Hmm.
And that didn't happen. I didn't even to the degree that I didn't even really look like him that much. He had lighter features than me. I had darker features. And then I also mentioned that there were some. You were talking about the step family. Um, my stepsister was very upset with me. Actually, even said, "How dare you call my father, who he didn't have to raise me, and he raised me my whole life, a deadbeat," which I didn't call him a deadbeat. I just liked an article on Facebook that was titled "Deadbeat Donors," but the whole article was about different great works of literature, you know, like Homer and the Iliad, and then also in entertainment like Star Wars and uh, that are about a child's search for his true father.
Hmm.
That was what the whole article was about. But because the title of the article said "deadbeat donors," she really took offense to it, and her comments kind of hurt me, man. That the way she was coming at me, because I really didn't know this person very well. She was just like a friend of mine on Facebook,
This
and
was your biological father's stepdaughter.
yeah, it's my biological father's stepdaughter. And so the one thing that her and I share in common
And you have not
biologically
met in
is a
person.
sister. We share a sister in common because her half sister is also my half sister. But of course, it's her half
Oh,
sister through her mom, and it's my half sister through my biological father, donor father.
right. Yeah,
Yeah.
you're not related to her at all.
No, we share no biology, but we do share a mutual sister. Yes.
Yeah. Well, one thing I had to do is just take a huge step away from Facebook, because I found that Facebook can consume your life, and then it ends up ruining a lot of friendships and relationships, and it just becomes this cesspool for anger and people judging other people, and it's really addictive, you know. And um, I didn't have a fallout like that with my biological family, but I could see how that could happen. And yeah, I'm sorry that happened, man. And I hope she gives you a chance and doesn't just judge you based on that. And you know, just take it. At least it didn't come from him. You know, at least, you know. Hopefully, when you guys had a talk, you guys had a good time, a good conversation, and he didn't think you thought he was a jerk or something. I don't know.
No, he was very nice when we met in person.
Yeah.
like I said, it was just I never had that. When I was sitting across from him the whole time, I was thinking, really, this is my father, really, like. And even when I first saw his photo on Ancestry, I was like, no, this can't be it. No, really, this is it.
Man,
So
I see the resemblance when I
yeah,
look at that photo.
yeah. I mean, now I can see it, but not
For
in that
sure.
way that I described. That way where it really clicked. And I look at it now, Matt, as a type of thing where his only interaction with me or my mom was through donation, and that was 9 months, of course, before I was born. So I see it sort of as the only connection between him and I would have to go back to 1981 because I'm 36 years old now. So I think I actually grew apart from him every year of my life since then, and I took on my own interest in absence of him. Not
Right.
having him, having that confusion that led me down a certain path, and that's why now when I meet him, I think I would really have to go back to back in time to feel any sort of connection to him.
Right. Um, yeah, I mean, you kind of just scratched the very, very surface. It seems like you didn't. Did you guys? I mean, you haven't had much time that you've known each other, and 2 days after you matched on Ancestry.com, you're having dinner together. So it's hard. It's like for me, I'm about to go meet my dad. I've been getting to know him over the phone once, twice, sometimes more than that a week. So I'm super excited because we've built this relationship. And over the past year, those phone calls have revealed a lot of things that's like, wow, we are so similar. And he's excited. He's really excited to meet me and his grandkids that he has never met. And I look at it now as I'm trying to catch up on 30 years lost time. Hopefully he lives long enough I get to spend some time with him. But yeah, I mean, just, it's okay to feel the way you feel. Just take your time. Don't feel rushed, and figure out what it is that you want to do next. And if you need to take a break, that's okay. But maybe if you give him a chance, maybe if he gives you a chance down the road, you guys have some more frequent communication without all the emotional deficiencies. Hey, can you do me a favor and pull down that blind behind you? There's a
Sure.
there's a light that's just staring at the monitor. And thanks, man. It's a little better.
Yeah.
Cool. Thanks.
Uh-huh. Yeah.
But yeah, maybe like right now, everything's pretty raw, pretty fresh. Like it was for me 4 years ago. 4 years ago, I found out that my dad had a criminal record, that he had been divorced twice, that he had lost his license to practice medicine. I found out all this bad stuff about him before I even had spoken to him. So I had a really negative lens to process through, and I was afraid. And I was in a pretty emotionally vulnerable state, and I really wanted to connect with family. And my first two attempts at communicating with siblings were very, very bad. And then his communication, as a result, went south. But a lot of it was my fault because I put up walls because I was scared. So I made an anonymous email address, are you my biological father at gmail.com, which nobody had taken that name, of course. So yeah, I contacted him anonymously, kind of almost, if in a way, it's kind of, in it figuratively, a little spiteful. Like you conceived me anonymously. Now I'm approaching you anonymously. And I had good reason to be concerned, but because I had those walls up, we didn't connect until this past year. So, but it's okay if it takes time. That's all I'm saying. And I hope it works out for you, and you can figure that out as you go. But yeah, I'll definitely be your friend to root you on to make sure you keep yourself sane. So
Yeah, I read an article of yours just yesterday, and I thought that response that your
which
father gave,
the World
the one,
magazine?
yeah, it has a picture of you. You're on a beach, and
Yeah, World magazine. Yeah.
I like that direct quote though that you posted from your father. His direct response to you. Can you
Oh
recall
yeah.
that
He said,
verbatim?
yeah, they were asking me for like some communication just so they could get context for how he responded to me. And the final kind of sentence in his email was like, you know, have a good life, basically, good riddance, essentially. I gave you the gift of life.
Yeah,
I should not have to endure any personal discomfort because of that. Like,
gift of life and good genetics
and good
too. He
genes,
said,
that's what he
yeah,
said. And,
yeah, yeah.
which at the time I took extremely like, almost like I thought he was maybe sociopathic or something, like lacking empathy or narcissistic.
Yeah, it sounded a
And
bit narcissistic.
yeah, and I think it is to an extent, but at the same time, I have to try to think about my part in that. And I think I was unfair in how I approached him and
Uh-huh.
didn't give him a chance. But I wasn't ready. That's what I'm trying to say. I wasn't ready 4 years ago. My situation was a lot worse. I had all those bad things I found, and my rejection was like death threats. Like, it was pretty intense. And I didn't have anybody to go through it with.
Right.
But that doesn't. I don't want to minimize what you're going through because it's hard, And so yeah, just take heart. Don't put too much pressure on yourself, and just let things happen, And you gotta work through that stuff in yourself. Is there a way you could put the screen up a little further up so we're looking straight
Sure.
at you? I'm not sure
Sure.
what you got to perch your phone on, but
Yeah, I could do
make it
that.
looks like you're sitting on the toilet or something.
Yeah, 1 second.
All right. But yeah, so yeah, I'm excited. We're lining up interviews. We've got a bunch of people that we plan on bringing on to this Donor Children podcast. Some of the names I'll drop. Dr. Jo Rose from the UK. She helped contribute to changing the laws in the UK to, I think it was to ban anonymity. And
Okay.
Morgan Kegley, she's a member of my website, DonorChildren. She's a great gal. Bethany Kennedy, Lori, another donor conceived person, and I'm pretty sure she's a Donor Children member. Lori Corangelo, she has been an adoptee and donor conceived activist and author of many, many books for decades. She's in her 70s, and I'm excited to get her on because she's somebody I want to record. She's a good lady. And Stephanie Blessing, she was in the Anonymous Father's Day film, and she's a donor conceived person. She's great. Dottie Nutzman.
Do you know where Stephanie? Well, I don't know. We should be giving out personal information, but I actually know Stephanie Blessing, and I don't know if it's the same. Is she also from our region there around? Is she from our region or no?
KMC?
Yeah.
KMC,
Yeah.
Kansas City, Missouri? No, she's not.
Okay. Okay.
Yeah,
Never mind.
I can edit out people's names if they don't want to be heard. But
Okay.
yeah, so Dottie Nutzman, Andrienne Latondra in Canada, Damien Adams, who is in Australia. He has been. He was going to change his birth certificate, I think. He's got a cool story. He's been
that's cool.
causing some waves in Australia. Albert Franz, he was on TED Talks, and he's from Germany.
Awesome.
Joey Carroll, who's a donor conceived, he's on Donor Children. Katie Faust, she works for Canavox, which is a nonprofit for family values. Stephanie Raymaker, she's in Belgium. She's an activist. She goes to various, third-party reproduction events and makes everybody very uncomfortable. And
Awesome.
she's a blogger, and she's doing a lot of work. Greg Wyatt, he's going to come on. He was in the 1992 hard copy that had my dad in it that I encourage people to take lightly what the content was in that film. But Greg was a featured story there, and he and I became friends around when I had my awakening. Jennifer Law, she works for the CBC network, and she helps produce things like Eggsploitation. It's a film about egg donation and how it affects people. And Eric Schwartzman, he did this donor conceived like post-it thing on Facebook, which is kind of fun. So you could send in like a little meme, like comic strip meme or whatever, like with a saying, like being donor conceived things that really creative, and he would post them anonymously or whatever. I could keep going. Jessica Kern, Bill Cordray. Bill Cordray started the first sort of donor conceived like communication, like email chain on Yahoo called PCVAI, People Conceived Via Artificial Insemination. And so he's been around for decades. Cece Moore, I'm hoping to speak with. She's a great person. She's like a DNA forensic, call him like a search angel. She's done production for 23andMe on PBS, Finding Your Roots, and 2020 on ABC and other things. Kevin Stout out of Germany. He's the musician who wrote the intro song.
Novum.
Yeah, Novum, which he's awesome. Nick Eisel, he's petitioning the FDA.
Yeah, Nick was in that article with you.
Yep. I mean, those are just like a scratch on the surface. There's so many people we're going to interview. I'm so excited. So stay tuned, everybody. But yeah, let's get into what this show's about. That was a really good like opening discussion, and thanks for sharing all that, Infinite. And
you're welcome.
We call you Infinite again because that's your DonorChildren username, and you prefer to remain anonymous at this time for your own personal privacy reasons, which is cool. So last our first podcast, we covered that donor conceived people experience 8 stages towards self-actualization. So we kind of came up with this ourselves, but stage 1 is the awakening, which is basically when you find out you're donor conceived. And like we talked about how it's a process that isn't necessarily just an event, but something that you might sense your whole life, like I did. But there's always a definitive day you find out. Mine was June 6th, 2012. So the second one is to be or not to be, in a sense of identity and donor conceived. Do you see yourself as donor conceived, or do you not want to think about this part of your life? And as kind of a comparison to like the Matrix movie, as you want to take the red pill or the blue pill. So the red pill being the pill of truth, and the blue pill being the pill of delusion and blissful ignorance. So number 3, define the relationships. So once you've decided, do you want to keep moving forward and find out more information about where you come from and figure out what you're feeling and processing that. And you want to find your biological family, and when you find them, what do you think, who are they? Because a lot of people I find call them their donors. But then if you keep talking to them, they say, yeah, biological father, And then at first they often say, you know, I don't need a relationship, just a photo and some information. I don't want to affect his life. I haven't had him my whole life. I don't need him. So it's this whole kind of like minimalization of it. And then sometimes, but then you keep talking to them and they're like one person I remember on DonorChildren recently spoke with, she reached out to her bio dad and she literally said that to him via the DNA site messaging. And then he changed his username and made it anonymous. And because she said basically, I don't want to know you. I just want information from you. And so then, you know, I thought maybe I asked her, well, did you consider maybe he wanted to know you? And maybe the fact that you don't want to know him causes him to not want to try to build a relationship, be open with you. So she hadn't considered that. So I try to encourage people, you know, to try to be true to yourself. Think deep about what you really want. And it's okay if you say something and then you change your mind too. My sister, when she found out, was in hardcore denial, and now she's totally on board and speaking about donor conception, and even in front of the United Nations. So for me, I define my sperm donor as my father. He is my progenitor, he's flesh of my flesh. So that's what I define him as my father. I refer to my dad who raised me as my stepdad. I still call him dad, but I define him as my stepdad. And any extended family that's from my paternal side, from my biological dad's side, I am very much interested in getting to know. And so the fourth step is, what am I seeking? So once you've defined who are these people, so if you just view him as your sperm donor and you just want medical information at this stage in his life and no more relationship, and which is kind of a catch-22 because people's health changes over their lifetime. So if you get his health situation when he's 50, then you never talk to him again. You don't know what happened after that. So I find that as an interesting situation. But anyway, what am I seeking? So kind of went over that briefly or last time in depth, but for me, I'm seeking to know my father, to have a relationship. I'm seeking the truth. I want to know where I come from. I want to know like my health information, obviously, my ancestral heritage, where I came from in the world. And I got all that from my years of tracking people down and speaking with the family. And it sounds like you're still kind of working through those 3 and 4, defining the relationships and what am I seeking. And so I'm not going to ask too much from you because I know that's kind of a sensitive spot right now. But if you want to say anything real quick, you can, or we can go on.
I think you mentioned earlier you were listing some people that are lined up to be interviewed on your show.
Yeah.
And you mentioned one guy who was even going to get his birth certificate changed.
Right.
And when I hear stories like that, I'm actually inspired, because without talking to you, of course, I've never met anybody in my regular life who has told me in person that they were donor conceived. I actually would start feeling guilty just for even bringing the subject up around my family, even putting them through this. And then when I hear people that are even stronger than I am and have done things, that took much more courage than what I've done, like he's actually even going to go get his birth certificate changed, then that does remove some of the guilt that I feel over this. And also your story too is inspiring. When you talk about defining the relationships, how I think that's so important, how you define your stepdad as your stepdad rather than father. And that actually takes a lot of courage, especially if you're talking to him to his face. Now, I don't know if you call him, if you've ever said stepdad, that word around him while he was in your presence or not, but this is pretty powerful. I mean, I remember the first time last summer when I was around my stepdad, and I told him, yes, I'm going to meet my, and I didn't know what to say. Do I say I'm going to meet my donor for dinner? Am I going to meet my father for dinner? But really, I wanted to have the courage to say I'm going to meet my father for dinner and say that face to face to him. I think I ended up saying something like, I'm going to meet him, you know? And when I said him, he just kind of like got the idea. But so that would be the step 3. And then again, step 4, the what am I seeking? I think that's changed for me because I never thought I would get this far. I thought I would never know my lineage, never know my father's name, and surely not be fortunate enough to meet him. And then now that I have, now it's kind of like, whoa, okay, well, I reached that goal. Now I got to be honest with myself. I'm kind of disappointed that it didn't really click when I met him. I didn't feel that missing link and missing piece in my life. So what is it I'm really seeking? Is that now what I'm really seeking? That missing link, that thing that makes all my puzzle pieces fit?
Yeah, it's complicated. For me, I did it all kind of backwards. I ended up connecting to cousins, so my father's first cousins, and one of them had all the genealogy for the whole family. She had spent 6 years of her own time and resources researching the family history. She compiled a 300-page in color book about our family, how everybody died going back 300 years, where we came from. You know, I found out that my great-grandparents got married in Brazil. I think I just saw this week. I looked at it again. I've pieced so many pieces together, and I've gotten to know the extended family first because they were more open to me. And so I kind of got a big picture of my ancestors, not just my dad, my father, my biological father, but more importantly for me, like what I'm made of, because what I'm made of is obviously 50% from him, but it comes from a huge family tree. And so I think of it in a big picture too. And so I kind of embraced that because I didn't have the relationship with him for years. And then this past year, kind of having all that in context. I mean, when he and I talk, I'm dropping names. I know the family. It's like I've been part of the family because I've already met people. I know where people live. So it's kind of exciting in that sense that I put all that work out to meet the whole family that as much as I could. And it's kind of paying off now, but it took me a long time. Something else you said stuck out to me, but I forget now. But yeah, I don't call Bill, who raised me, my stepdad, to his face. More so just that's how I identify him, as my stepdad. I did say that he was like a good friend once on a radio show. I did an interview in like Australia on the phone or something one time with the news organization, and I think he heard the radio show again because of Facebook. So Facebook, a lot of good and a lot of bad, but you know, it's he chooses how he handles that information. If he can't handle that's the truth for me, then I can't change that about him. And if he can't respect that, then does he really love me? Does he really care about me? My answer, my thought to that is maybe he doesn't. I feel like I was conceived for a purpose to make them happy. And so even in this process of finding out my biological family and going through this journey, you know, they have not supported me. My mom told me once that she wishes I never had found out. They became abusive alcoholics, mentally, emotionally, physically even. He's been very physically abusive to me in the past since this all came out. So it's made me reassess, you know, those relationships as well. Not just And I should be allowed to feel something and not be, invalidated. I should be allowed to feel things, allowed to verbalize those feelings. And so I've had to just kind of do it on my own and just kind of validate myself in a sense and not expect them to validate me or, which is fine. He might even be watching this show right now because I know he liked my DonorChildren page. So he's going to get this on the news feed later. And if he wants to click on it and listen, he's listening to this as I speak. So everything I say could have the potential to hurt, but that's not my intention. My intention is not to hurt. He has to figure out, why is it that my truth and who I am and what I'm feeling hurts him. So it's something's lacking in him, and he's projecting it onto me. And so I've had to emotionally and mentally sort of protect myself, and at the same time try to show grace and mercy and love despite all the abuse and lack of support. I have definitely taken months or years, even at some points, of virtually no communication, because that's what I had to do to keep myself healthy, and allow him to try to grow. And I'd say he's tried pretty hard. He seems to be trying consistently, but I still think he doesn't quite understand, and he doesn't really ask. He makes assumptions. He sends me emails with various news articles and says it helps him have empathy or whatever, which is great. But my mom, on the other hand, she's living in denial. I don't think she'll ever come around. So I just have to accept that. So it's not just defining like, okay, this guy, he's my sperm donor. He sold some sperm. I'm here. It's not just defining who is he to me, but even I've had to reassess my parents that raised me and, my stepdad's entire family. I don't consider them my family because they're not. But when I first found out, one of my cousins said, "Oh, we're still cousins." And while I appreciated his sentiment, I just don't feel that way. And I've never felt close to that family anyways. Like, I never identified with them. I cared about them very much. I was raised with them, but I always felt like I didn't fit in. And so it's okay with me that we're not related. It's fine. It actually makes everything I felt make sense for the first time in my life. So redefining, I don't even want to say redefining, but defining those relationships really helps process what it is that you're seeking. Because if you don't know who these people are and what they mean to you, it's going to be hard to figure out what you want out of it. So we're kind of dipping back into the first podcast, but it's good conversation. Step number 5, what's the next step in the journey? So once you've defined the relationships of your biological family and the family that raised you, what's the next step? And after you've figured out what you're seeking. So for me, it was going back a few years. My next step was I was very quickly sure that I wanted to know my father, and I considered him my father immediately, I think, when I found out. It's like, okay. But so for me, I don't know why, but I just was pretty quick. So what's the next step? So for me, the next step was to try to find him. And what I did was, I did what everybody does. I go on Google, and the only thing I found out there was the Donor Sibling Registry and am4.net and Tangled Webs. And I stumbled into PCVAI by Bill Cordray on Yahoo, PCVAI Yahoo group. And that was about it. I mean, I didn't see a whole lot about it. anonymousus.org, Alana Newman's website. I joined the DSR, which was a big mistake. I ended up getting my money back after my membership was revoked the day after I launched DonorChildren.com. So I'm glad that I was able to get my money back. I had to ask for it. But yeah, that was a total waste of my money. But which is a big reason why I started DonorChildren.com, was because there wasn't enough resources out there for people. Sorry, I need to turn this fan off real quick. Drying out my throat. So once I actually posted on am4.net, which is a free billboard that actually Lori Coriangelo, that lady we're going to interview, she started. You can go check it out, am4amfor.net. And I posted, basically it's just a public billboard. There's no privacy on it. You just put your clinic or university where you conceived and your contact info, and people can email you. And I actually ended up meeting David Brown from that, who was from KUMC as well. And now we're good friends. And we ended up getting casted for the VH1 Swab Stories show through am4.net. And I tried emailing every person on am4 that I could find that had ever posted from Kansas City or KUMC. And I don't remember getting many leads, but between that and the DSR and all the problems with that, I realized there was really no resources out there for donor conceived people. Everything costs money, and it had expiring memberships. So people who were being advertised as contacts were not reachable because they had not renewed their subscriptions. And so, I mean, on one site, on the DSR, it 8 contacts from KMC. I contacted all of them, and only one responded after 7 months, and it had gone to her spam folder. The rest of them, I got an email saying they needed to pay more money because they were expired members, and I never heard back. And so I decided, I needed to try to change that. So I built DonorChildren, which is a free social network. And it does much more than just a single message to message one person at a time. On DonorChildren, you can create groups. You can join meetups. You can share pictures and documents. And so I'm getting down a tangent. We'll get to this come back to this later. But the next step in my journey was to find resources, find help. And then DNA testing was the biggest thing. So I ended up testing on 23andme.com, Ancestry.com, and FamilyTreeDNA.com. And those are the 3 big databases, and everyone should make sure that they test on all 3, because you have to make sure that you are on every database, because you never know who's going to join which database, and you may match siblings on one or a cousin on another that is the missing link to solving your mystery, your case. And so my story, I matched a lady on 23andMe that was my 3rd to 4th cousin. And thanks to her help and her parents' testing, I was able to figure out who my father was. And so DNA testing's huge. Also gedmatch.com, I think, maybe .org, but I think it's gedmatch.com, is a free database. So once you get your text file from 23andMe, that's your DNA results, you can download that to your computer, and you can upload that to gedmatch.com, and now you're on that database for free. Also, it costs currently, right now in 2018, about $100 per test for each DNA site. I highly recommend doing the $200 test through 23andMe, because you get the health reports, which for me, when I did it back in 2013, the FDA hadn't banned banned that yet. And so I have the full health reports that they were doing back then. Once the FDA put a stop on it, that was a real bummer for everyone else who tested. But now they've opened it back up, but it's more controlled by the FDA. But I still recommend it. It'll tell you your carrier traits for diseases, your chance of getting Alzheimer's, heart disease, gallstones, cancer, like all kinds of things. It tells you about your earwax, what kind of an athlete you are. Just lots of interesting stuff that I really enjoyed learning about when I was looking to figure out like where I came from and why I look the way I look in the mirror and why I'm a soccer player and a road bike cyclist and not like a 100-meter dash sprinter. And another way you can save a little money too is you can test on 23andMe, and then once you get that raw data, you can download that text file. You can upload that to Family Tree DNA, and they have a $59 transfer product, so you don't have to go through another DNA test. They just start processing it right away, and you get quicker results. And also, if everyone's DNA testing, please go to DonorChildren.com. Help us out because we're affiliate partners with 23andMe, Family Tree DNA, and Ancestry.com. And any DNA test you all buy through DonorChildren links. So if you click on the link and you buy the test right there in that session, we get a commission, and that helps pay for our website. And we also appreciate donations. We do get donations from time to time from members. And we also sell these cool t-shirts in the background and one I'm wearing. Mostly I've given a lot of them away and bumper stickers. I do send people bumper stickers, no cost. I'll just send you a sticker or two if you want one, just let me know. And I have sent people t-shirts, but I appreciate it if you guys are willing to pay a little bit. I just asked $7 for shipping right now. So basically you're getting the shirt for free. It costs me $10 at least, I think, for each shirt to make it. So maybe down the road I'll make a little money on the shirts, but I'm really just trying to get the word out about donor children. And I want donor children to remain free if at all possible, because I've had members tell me that they joined because it was free. One example was Zytex 9877. 3 of the moms were on the DSR for 7 years, and they had not had any, they had connected to each other through the site. So they were able to do that, which was great. But then they joined Donor Children and made a group for Zytex 9877. And a week later, after they made their group, the father of their children joined. And I messaged him and I said, why did you join? Because they've been out here on the DSR for 7 years. And he said, because it was free. So, as crazy as that sounds to me, as being a father of multiple children, I don't understand how, if I found a kid that I didn't have, I would jump on a plane as soon as possible and go meet that kid. Some people, they just don't, they did it for money, or, they don't want there to be any personal cost or discomfort. Like my dad even told me, I don't want any personal discomfort because I gave you this gift of life. So it's almost like an existential debt or guilt or whatever. But I don't want to knock on him. He's a nice guy. I'm really happy he joined, and that they're all connecting, and their group's grown very large. I forget how many members they have now, but it's up there in the teens. And so that's a great success story, and a reason why there needs to be a free website for people to connect. And not everybody wants to connect on Facebook about this stuff. Like even you, Infinite, you don't want people to know your name. So when people are living their lives on social media, they don't want to talk about this or other people to see what groups they're members of or in their news feed or anything like that. So it's a good idea to be able to have a website where people can connect that's separate from their mainstream social media lives. A lot of people still jump over to Facebook and stuff once they want to connect. But even then, I notice a lot of people in these groups, they often don't want to do that. So they end up just communicating on DonorChildren. So the next step in the journey basically is figure out what are your resources. I went ahead and put together a resources page on DonorChildren years ago, and I add to it occasionally still. And if there's any websites or anything that you all know about that's not on there, please send me an email to donorchildren@gmail.com. But basically, I put every resource out there that's available to donor conceived people. So you can just go to that one page and you got a lot there to look at. Also check out our news page. You'll see an archive of all these podcasts as well as other places in the news DonorChildren's been, as well as just some general news articles that I found interesting. And I for sure don't keep up with donor conception in the news enough. If I could do this every day, full time, all day long, I could be more focused on current events. So maybe down the road, I'll commit more to that. But I do have some Google keyword searches saved. So I do see, almost every day there's something out in the Ethernet about donor conception happening. So if you guys find any interesting news stories you'd like to share, please send us a message. So do you have anything to add to that, Infinite? Because I'm sure you've got some things maybe I didn't think about, or something unique for you about what was your next step in your journey. And can you relate it all to anything I said?
Yeah, you were going through a lot of the resources on your website, and your website was certainly one of the first places that I found. I think the first thing anybody does is they Google donor conception. I'd never even heard of that term when I found out I was donor conceived. And so even what to search on Google was kind of new to me. Do I put in artificial insemination? Do I put in, anyway, your site came up. And it's funny how in the beginning, I think people, they just took for granted their whole life that they knew who their father was. So when they find out that they're donor conceived, maybe
take a second here, Lynn.
Sure, go ahead.
There we go. The video was lagging, and I don't know if it was just me but go ahead.
Okay. Yeah, and when they find out that they're donor conceived, I think they think that automatically, like, just it's like a birthright that we're supposed to know who our father is. Like, I thought that, okay, I'm donor conceived. Well, let me call the doctor's office, let me call the conception doctor. Let me search a little bit on the internet. I'll come up with my real father in no time. And I actually got put in my place a little bit by another person who was conceived through Kansas University, a girl who her stepfather, who she had believed was her dad, had walked out on the family. And that's how she found out that she was donor conceived when she was a teenager, because as he was slamming the door and leaving, he said, and by the way, I'm not your father anyway, and slammed the door. So she had kind of grown up since her teenage years knowing that she didn't know her father. So she doesn't have any kind of expectation like that she has a birthright, or that she's going to, find out right away who her real father is. But because I'd gone 36 years of my life taking for granted that I knew who my father was, I think I had an unrealistic expectation at first. So when I found your website, I automatically thought, well, this guy Matt is probably my brother. He was conceived at Kansas University, and whoever this guy's dad is, okay, oh, his dad's Papa Doc, okay, that's probably my dad too, and then you start. I've even heard stories from people that they go out to the store, they go out to Walgreens or wherever, and they see any gentleman who's in his 60s, and they think, oh, well, maybe that guy's my dad. You just have this feeling like, man, I'm right on the cusp of finding out who my father is. This is going to come to me any moment now, flash of insight or something. And then slowly you start to come to the realization that this thing really isn't as easy as you think it may be. And actually, knowing who your father is and knowing your lineage is not just something that everybody is raised with and something that you're automatically born with. And maybe it's something we should have a right to. And there's people who are fighting for that right for us, that this is no longer anonymous, that we have rights to information about our father, about our lineage, at least when we hit the age of 18, like adoptees have, but we don't. And so I went through the process of being at your website and first failing by trying to call the conception doctor, by trying the traditional means, oh, let me just call up the doctor's office. I'm sure they'll tell me. Let me just call up Kansas University. I'll call up Kansas University. I'm sure they'll tell me. Nope, they would just, click, not respond to my messages, connect me to somebody else who wasn't there, and then connect me back to the same person. Finally, I said, okay, let me actually follow Matt's steps on his website. Let me go ahead and pay the money, do these tests, and go through it that way. I failed on 23andMe. I failed on Family Tree DNA. Didn't find out anything. And I was like, okay, this is my last chance. Let me try Ancestry. Then finally on Ancestry, bingo, my father came right up. Wow. But yes, I did eventually come around to following the steps that you had put on your
that's
website.
That's why I hear that all the time with people from DonorChildren that I meet, and that they always, almost every time I talk to somebody, they hesitate on buying all the tests at once. So they want to take a step at a time. And I try to emphasize as strong as I can, but it's hard to convince people because it's a matter of budget sometimes, or, people are just skeptical or whatever. They think I'll buy one. They don't understand why you have to be on all three. So thanks for sharing, because that's really true that, if you had just done it all at once, you would have known a lot sooner and not had
a year ago.
Yeah, you would have known a year ago and not had to go through this agony of a year, in a sense that you kind of like prolonged your process a year.
Sure.
So I prolonged my process about a year too. I think it took me a while to find the DNA test because a lot of people too are afraid to send their DNA to these companies. A lot of people are a little paranoid and they think that the government's going to clone you or something. I do opt out of the research. I recommend doing that so that you're not letting these companies research using your DNA. I guess I just blindly trust that they're not going to do those things. The government isn't going to clone me. But the funny thing is, I don't really care, kind of, because I feel like a clone already. Like I feel like a GMO, like I was a designer baby. I was chosen because my father, they wanted somebody who was 170 pounds or taller with blue eyes and thick. They wanted somebody thick. I'm pretty, look at these guns. Yeah. So, right there, I'm already like feeling like a clone in a way. I'm a GMO. Even the medical school told our fathers that they were superior human beings, and that they were helping sort of dilute like the bad genes in society with their superior genes, with their high levels of IQ and all that. So, because they're doctors, they're going to be doctors. So it's kind of a sick thing if you think about it, a little delusional, like systematic narcissism kind of programming. But anyways, for me, the cost to not DNA test outweighed the risks of being cloned or my privacy or whatever. I just decided to go all the way and just make my profiles like public, put my real name. And now that I found my biological surname, I put that on my profile now as well. So I put Matt Windler-Dorn. So I do actually plan on changing my name eventually, and all my wife and kids' names. I don't know if I'll go through like the birth certificate thing like Damian Adams, but I do want to change my surname because I really do identify with my biological family, and it's who I am. Just the more I get to know about my history and meet family, it's just I just feel so connected, and I love the meaning of my last name, and the whole story of how we came to America as German nomadic farmers. So I really relate to that. So that's another bunny trail. But basically, so what's the next step? So we've talked about DNA testing. We've talked about checking out donorchildren.com/resources to see all the resources. Go to our Get Started page. Follow all the steps that I laid out, like Brian said. If you follow all those steps, you will have success. Create groups on donor children, one for your donor, if you have a donor ID. Create one for the doctor who did the insemination. Create one for the medical clinic or university where you were conceived at. And if they're already on the website, don't make a second one, please, because that makes more work for me. But go join that group. Do a search in the search bar. There's a little search bar on the top right of every page, and you can filter members groups and search for members with your criteria. Go to the members page. There's a whole detailed search filter tool. So those are some good next steps to take, and you'll start meeting people like Infinite and myself. And check out Facebook too. There's some really good groups on Facebook. Worldwide Donor Conceived People, I highly recommend on Facebook. A lot of great people in there. There's only donor conceived people there. You won't get ridiculed like you do in some of the other ones that have everyone in there, the parents, and so those can get pretty toxic. And I've had to keep myself isolated from some of that just because it got to me too much. But the next step is stage 6, which is, what will I do with what I find? So you go on this journey to find answers. You do DNA testing, you join Donor Children, you start meeting people, you start meeting your family through these DNA sites. You start connecting, building a family tree, searching, calling people, connecting dots. So now what are you going to do with what you find? For me, I just tried to reach out and do my best at having a relationship. And I kind of screwed up the way I did it because I was too emotionally needy, I think, at the time. And I was impatient and could have used a little more tact, especially contacting my half-sister. She got very upset when I contacted her. And so I regret that, but I try not to be too hard on myself. And I encourage you all to not be too hard on yourselves because it's not an easy thing to try to figure out. It's a lot to balance. Just like Infinite's going through this right now, trying to process his family that raised him, and then now his stepsister from his biological dad that all of a sudden thinks she's got him pegged in a box or something, and isn't saying nice things about him. These are all difficult things to wade through. So yeah, you're kind of in that stage too right now, I think, because you've also gone ahead. You've kind of sought and you've taken steps, and now you're finding things, and now you're trying to figure out what to do with it. For me, one of the things I did was I made a website. I tried to find a way to help other people, to kind of be an outlet, and it really was therapeutic. It's been great to make something positive out of something very painful in my life. Something else that I did was I went on a TV show. That was a blast. I got a free trip to New York City for 6 nights. Wow, 3 nights, but I extended it. What else? I've driven to Wichita. I've driven to Burlington, Colorado. I've driven to Kansas City. I'm going to meet my dad. I'm driving across the country with my family of 5, and my wife's pregnant, just to go meet my dad. So that's something I'm going to do. I'm doing a podcast. I'm telling people about it, you know, that I meet, talking to people, sharing my story, which we're going to get to soon in the next stage. So I guess stage 6 and 7, or stage 6 and 7 and 8 kind of run together, but we'll try to not skip ahead. So I've tried to build relationships with my biological family, tried to maintain as healthy as possible relationships with the family that raised me. So how about you, Infinite? Anything you want to add?
Yeah, so you're mentioning some things that could be viewed as a positive, and I'm of course inspired by the initiative that you've taken to do something about it. You noticed that there was a void of resources, there was a void of support networks for people, and you're trying to make a difference. But you did also say something to me one time that really offers a grim outlook on our situation. One time you said to me that what our parents did was wrong, and there's nothing that we can do that will ever make that right. And I don't know if you remember when you said that to me, but sometimes I do reflect on that, like when I'm in a dark period like I was in last week, and I kind of just wanted to compartmentalize and just, forget the whole donor thing for a while. Was that, I don't know, Matt, do you sometimes feel like we're fighting a losing battle no matter what we did? Because as you said, I mean, our parents secretly went and got an anonymous man's sperm and created a child. There was no natural conception, no endorphins being exchanged between father and mother. And there's a lot of moral issues surrounding this, and we haven't really gotten into a lot of these moral issues. I'm a little older than you are, so I can remember being in my sophomore year of high school. And at that time, I wasn't that articulate at that time, or that well read. And I think I only read at that time maybe hip hop magazines and sports magazines. That was about it. But I was really taken in by the Dolly story when it came out. And for people that don't know, that was a sheep that was cloned around the year 1998, I think it was. And anything I could get my hands on about the Dolly story, I was reading. And it's kind of fascinating now to look back on, because like I said, I wasn't that, I didn't have many intellectual pursuits at the time, and for me to be so fascinated by this random news story about a sheep being cloned, I really think it speaks to the subconscious mind, and that I knew that there was some sort of something larger going on in my own life and my own conception. And the sheep cloning thing, it just really struck me. It was so eerie, and I all the moral issues surrounding it. Is this right? Is this okay? Is this good for humanity? Is this good? Would it be good if one day we could clone human beings? We could take, human beings who have contributed a lot of great things to society and clone them, or clone people from the past, clone.
So what you're saying,
figure,
what
yes.
you're saying is, as part of the next step in your journey, you're kind of saying, like, do something about it. Like, what can we do to change what's happening? Is that where you're going?
No, I'm saying when I'm in a dark place, I mean, when I have a positive outlook, of course, I feel like, hey, man, we're making things better. Our situation is getting better. We're finding out more about ourselves. But when I'm in that dark place, Matt, I think back to what you said about what was done was wrong, and there's nothing that we can do that can change that fact. That maybe from a moral perspective, what was done of secretly going and seeking an anonymous man's sperm was a wrong.
Yeah.
Do you remember when you said that to me about that?
Sounds like something I would say. So I do think it's wrong, but I think what you have to decide is, what do you do with that? If you agree with that, is it just something that you dwell on and it makes you depressed or brings you down and hopeless? Or do you take that feeling and that that truth or that belief, that truth, you know, and do you take that and you go and you do what Nick Eisel's doing and you're petitioning the FDA? Something that I'm doing, I'm trying to help people. And I'm also the big reason, another huge part of Donor Children is creating the first demographic pool for donor conceived people so we can have a community voice that we've never had in the history of the world. So I do think that what my mom did was wrong because it's caused me a lot of suffering, and it didn't solve their problem. They didn't have any better fertility. She just had a child with another man, and it created a lot of confusion and suffering for me.
It's really mislabeled as fertility treatment. I really wish when we're talking about definitions of things that's a term that needs to be redefined, because I even find that with my parents. I find that with my biological father, my donor, because he even performs these kind of operations for a living since he was a med student.
Right. It's it doesn't help anyone become more fertile. It's a substitute.
Yes.
Yeah. I agree 100% that the way that they've defined these words like donor, that's why I do air quotes, even though I look cheesy, because it's not a donation, it's selling, especially eggs. You get paid tens of thousands of dollars for eggs, and they're putting chemicals into women's bodies that are suspected at causing cancer and early menopause. And we need to think about what we're doing as a society. Because if it wasn't bad, there wouldn't be thousands of people that I've met looking for help. If it was good, there would be nobody looking.
Right.
You know, but the fact that there are people looking, the fact that people have stories and they have suffering and they have feelings, doesn't cause me to go, you know, judge them and validate them. Obviously I'm biased because I'm one of them, but it sure would be nice if society had some awareness of this, and hopefully one day there will be like psychological studies done and this will be in textbooks. I mean, in my ideal world, third-party reproduction would be completely banned everywhere. Like I view it as human trafficking, because human beings are being created from these gametes that are bought and sold, and there are transactions made, and it's at the expense of the child. And that is basically the definition of human trafficking: exploiting, especially children, exploiting a child for the, you know, pleasure of these adults. And that's profiting. There's profit, huge profit in this multi-billion dollar industry that has no regulations in the US. I don't even want to see it regulated. I'd like to see it called what it is, which is human trafficking. I'd like to see it banned. But those are my personal views. I want Donor Children to be a place where people come together and share all their views. And as a whole, we have a voice, we have legitimacy as a group. So, I mean, already I get lots of contacts from academic professors at various universities that are doing research, and they post on the forums. They ask me for specific types of situations and members. Like they want egg donors, or they want donor conceived people only, and it's great to be able to offer them people and give people an opportunity to participate in these studies. And the bigger we get as a community, the more significance we'll have, which is why I'm so passionate about sharing about Donor Children. I'm not making money on this website. I mean, I'd love to make money in the future. That'd be great. But my heart is really to help people and to grow it, to make it a community voice. And I want it to change the world. I want it to rewrite textbooks. I want it to rewrite laws. And something I've told you before that you haven't brought up yet, but something to take that it was wrong a little further. that I've compared being donor conceived as kind of like being abducted in a way, and that your parents who created you are in a sense abductors, and we have Stockholm syndrome. Like, and I see it all the time with people where they're worried about seeking what they want, finding answers, because they don't want to hurt the people that raised them. And even in my
Sure.
even in my situation, my stepdad has told me many times how I've hurt him and how he changed my diapers. And so how somehow that means that I'm supposed to just see him as my dad, and that I shouldn't want to understand where I come from and know my real father and know my heritage and why I am the way I am.
Yeah, and you make a great point on that when you say a lot of those arguments that your father is making, an abductor or a kidnapper could make those same arguments.
Yeah, my stepdad. Yeah, and
your step.
Yeah, I just want to make sure people know who it is.
Sure.
Yeah, so I find there's like this existential debt or guilt that's put on us by society and by our parents who made us, that we owe them something, or which is so ridiculous if you think about it. Like, if I hired a nanny and I was never around, would that nanny now be the kid's parent? Like, no. Like, you can't replace a person's parents. You can remove them from their family, but you can't replace them. And you can't think that children only need, to be fed like a pet dog, and that they're going to turn out fine. Humans are more complicated than that.
Yeah, and Matt, I think that's why I was a bit disappointed this last week, is because there's a bit of a previous investment trap, is what I call it. It's a word that comes from philosopher Harry Brown. It's when you've already decided, you've put a lot of time and energy, and my energy had gone towards this idea that the payoff for me from all these feelings of guilt or the effort I made or causing all these problems to arise with my family that they had swept under a rug many, many years ago. And they'd been operating like this thing never happened. Like my stepdad was really my biological father. And here I came and upsetted the apple cart. I had kind of invested in the idea that the payoff would come when I met my father. When I met my real biological father and found my biological family. And so that would be this deeper understanding that would come through that process, deeper understanding of myself. And I think when I didn't get that click feeling, Matt, when I met my biological father, those feelings of guilt arose again. Those feelings of guilt that I'd had initially of upsetting the apple cart and asking my parents questions about how I was conceived. Is my brother really my full brother or half brother? Having them lie to me about that. I went through a lot of struggles on that end, with my brother rejecting withdrawing any support from me, even coming at me with this is true because you wanted it to be true. That was my brother's response. He was also donor conceived, and I could have gone my whole life without knowing this. Like I'd told him that Santa Claus wasn't real. That I really that I'd ruin.
That's a really good.
Yeah. I'd ruin his life, by ruining his fairy tale of a dream life, and here I'd destroyed their dreams, and that's
But you don't think you guys share the same father, right?
Well, my mom initially lied about that too. Right away, she had said, "No, but you guys have the same donor. You're still full brothers. I'm sure. Look, that is your full brother. You guys have the same donor. I even heard him in the other room talking to the doctor. I wasn't supposed to see him, but I saw the back of his head." And she came up with all these outlandish stories and justifications and reasons why the doctor told me so, I'm sure. And of course, finally, when the DNA results came out through 23andMe, we were confirmed half brothers, and we have different donors. But anyway, I thought the payoff from all of this would come when I met my biological father. And like I said, when I didn't feel that click feeling, Matt, those old feelings of guilt, I think, came back again, because it was like, well, what if I've caused all this turmoil and all this problems with my family, and then what if my biological family now rejects me? My sister did reject me. She didn't want to meet me. She wouldn't even accept contact. I don't even know if she's even seen my picture. She wanted nothing to do with this situation. So people in our situation, Matt, who then have their biological family, after they've now caused all this disruption in their family that raised them, their social family, to then now, if they have any rejection with their biological family, I mean, they're kind of catching it on two ends if they get caught in that kind of situation, right,
yeah,
Matt?
There's tons of risk when you take that leap and you take the red pill and you seek things out and you take those steps in your journey. And just those first 5 steps alone are full of lots of pushback from your friends you grew up with, or your parents that raised you, or other family, the extended people in your life. And then, just like you said, that's a great way to put it. On both ends, you're having to deal with disrupting both sides. And you really have to take a step back, because it's not you. You're not disrupting. All that's happening is the truth is coming to the surface. And all the things that have happened are because of their decisions. It's truth coming back to bite them in the ass. It's accountability for their actions. Now, I'm not saying that because we're trying to punish them or anything like that. That's not at all what I'm saying. But what I'm saying is, in the Bible, that the scripture says that the truth will set you free. And I know for me, it truly has. But for some people, the truth isn't what they want, because they've lived their whole life with lies and delusion. And they want you to just continue the lie. It's easy. It's serving them for you to just keep the fantasy going and not think about what you need. And so it really takes a lot of strength from an individual to go down this road. Some people have support. Some people have social families that actually do support them. I know of some. I don't think that everybody gets 100% support, but I do think some people get more support than others. I know for me, I had the opposite of support. I had extremely abusive social parents, my mom and stepdad, and lots of even their friends, calling me and, telling me I should be beat up with a baseball bat and stuff like that. Just really intense stuff that is really hard when you're just trying to find out where you come from and validate your feelings, because you're feeling all these things. And just because they don't want you to go down that road doesn't mean that it wouldn't be in your best interest to see what's down, see what's under those stones. Even in my story, I found a first cousin who is like a famous tennis player, and they won't really respond to me, but what I'm thinking has happened is her dad is my uncle, and he was given up for adoption when my grandparents were in high school. So even in me trying to find my biological family, I ended up finding one of my father's siblings he never knew he had. I mean, that's very disruptive. I'd let this stepsister just like squawk. I mean, she sounds like not somebody, like, who cares what she says,
Well, when I say my sister rejected, it's actually my biological sister that rejected me.
Not your stepsister.
My biological father's daughter.
Yeah.
She's refused to even acknowledge me or refused any contact from me. I don't even know if she's seen my picture. Mm-hmm. And the explanation that I was given was that she's always been the darling of the family, because she's the only, between my father and his wife, she's their only shared biological child. Like
Oh, right.
my father has 2 stepchildren, but she's the only one that they all share in common. And if you look at photos of the family, she's always positioned in the center, and everybody else is surrounding her. And that she felt when she heard about it, that she actually had a brother and that her father had another child. She felt like suddenly now there was this other person that might steal the spotlight from her, which shocked me. I thought that the rejection would be based on illegitimacy. Like she would just see me as being, oh, well, that's sperm donation. That's illegitimate. The fact that she actually saw me, I feel so far outside on the perimeter. And for her to see me as a threat.
She said that?
For her to, this is what I was told by my stepsister and by my father.
You're a threat because she won't.
No, they described it as a stealing her spotlight type of thing. That she's the darling of the family. That she's very privileged and spoiled and so on. And that when she heard that she had another brother, it was shocking to her because she's always had all the attention and accolades in the family. So yeah, that really surprised me because the last thing I would view myself as is as a threat to steal anyone's spotlight. I'm so far out on the perimeter, man. I don't even have my dad's phone number, and I live far away anyway. Like, to think that she would view me in that context really shocked me. I thought that she would reject me, if anything, on the basis of illegitimacy. As I said, oh, well, that's just a. So I didn't even know how to take that, and I still don't know how to take that, Matt. Yeah.
Well, I think you just got to give her freedom and space to come around on her own time. Hopefully she will. Maybe she won't. But if your dad's going to keep a relationship with you, it's something she's going to have to face. And just don't dwell on it. Try not to focus on it. I know it hurts because it's like WTF, like there's no empathy at all from her. She's not being gracious or loving. She's being extremely self-centered, and it sounds like she's the only child and she's spoiled, and she doesn't want you to take away her, So I'm sorry that you're going through that. That's
interesting point though on the stepsister end. What I got from her, what happened to that end was, and this is an interesting debate too, because ironically, there sometimes these donors are referred to as deadbeat donors. I didn't give them this term, but that term is out there, and there was an article, which was actually an excellent article. That was about literature, classical literature, about the search of someone's search for their biological father. But the title of the article, they had put deadbeat donor. And my stepsister came at me with, well, how dare you call my dad? You don't know what he did for me. And he raised me when he didn't have to. And we were struggling, and my mom was struggling. And he took us in like we were his own. Now think about that. Here she is. I'm actually his biological son. And I have my stepsister telling me what a great father and what a great man he is. I barely know anything about the guy. I've only met him once for dinner. And she's coming at me angrily just because I liked an article on Facebook that happened to be titled Deadbeat Donors. But the whole article was just about classical literature. This was my stepsister, yes.
Yeah. I think you've got a lot of drama going on. And the best thing to do when that happens is to not feed the drama and just take a step back, give it a week or two, and then maybe pick up the phone and call your father. Just be like, hey, I just wanted to check in. I got a lot of intense communication from your two sisters, and I just wanted to let you know that I think well of you, and I want to try to see where we can go with this, if that's what you want, and try to just be direct and just focus on positivity with him. Because if they start filling his mind with all these things that aren't true, that could be, it's good to try to make sure he understands where you're at. I think that's what I would do.
Well, Matt, with your father, are you at the point where you're able to talk to him about emotional issues, or are you
Oh
guys
yeah.
do you guys just discuss superficial things like, oh, how's the weather in Kansas City or whatever?
Oh no, like we're on I love you terms. We He's given me marriage advice. We talk about, I call him for advice on remodeling stuff because he's in construction too. And I feel like for the first time in my life, I have like my real father, and I can call him, and he knows how I process things because he's the same way. We're very similar. So it's been very awesome to finally have that feeling in my life that I can call. Like I can always call my stepdad, but he doesn't really listen to me very well. And I don't even know if it's his, I want to like blame him for that, but because I don't think he understands me, you know. So I talked to my dad, my real dad, who I've only known for a year, on the phone, and he gets me so quickly, and he says the exact thing that I need to hear. That's what's amazing to me. um but that's taken, like I said, 4 years now to get to this point. In the past year, being open with each other, um, you got to put it in context with where you're at in your relationship. I'm just trying to say, don't get caught up in the drama because it's only going to take you. It's If you feed it, it's only going to make it look bad on you. And just try to, if you do want to have a relationship with your biological father, I would try to like calm down from this and maybe reach out to him and just say, hey, how's it going? I'm back. I'm working. Um, just wanted you to know I really appreciated meeting you, and tell him what you want, and tell him
Well,
what you want, you know?
we have not reached that point, Matt, of being
Okay.
able to talk about anything emotional. We've talked about ancestry, family members. That seems to be a subject that he enjoys, like distant family members.
Okay. Well, you don't have to
Um,
go into
but
whatever. You could just not even talk about
I've
this. Your
I've tested the waters before a little bit. I've tried to put little clues out about my emotional state on all this, and he really hasn't taken on those issues. And so I don't know if he's really ready to go there
Yeah.
yet with me. So maybe you're right. Maybe it's something that takes time. I mean, I know your father outright just rejected you at the beginning, but at least I think, Matt, through that rejection, you validated yourself from the very beginning with your father. I mean, you were coming at him with your emotional state, with your perspective on the whole donor conceived issue, and you came out with that to him up front. So then it was only a matter of your father coming around to that fact, and he eventually came around to it. Me, I'm sort of more trying to ease my father into that kind of a subject, and
Yeah.
I'm not really hitting him with everything all at once the way that you did.
Well, and I mean, also, just so you know, like a year ago when we started talking on the phone, we kept everything very much like not emotional, like talked about work, talked about things we like to do, how we invest our money. Um, just we talked about all kinds of things, and we got to know each other, and it wasn't emotional. It was just we connected, kind of like you get to know a new person, you know. Um,
Yeah.
and then as we kept making phone calls, you know, and sharing more of our life together, you know, he had a stressful day on the job site. He started telling me about it. And then he called me another day, and I had a stressful day with my wife or something, or work. And, you know, you start sharing life, and you start growing into that emotional kind of relationship, which, so yeah, in the beginning, it wasn't like that for sure. I mean, it's gotta take some time, but I do say too, you can't build any relationship without putting yourself out there, without being vulnerable at some point. Um,
Yeah.
so eventually, like both of you, if you want to have a relationship, and after you've started getting to know each other, started sharing life with one another, eventually it probably would just happen. And maybe, and I hope that he has empathy for you. And I hope that you can also try to hear him and value him and what he thinks or feels. And, but it's, yeah, it's hard when you're in the middle of it and it's all so new still. But, and then you got the drama going on. I would just say, just ignore the drama. But let's get to our next stage, because we're talking a lot about what do we do with what I find. So we covered a whole lot. I mean, that one. I mean, man, you find stuff and then you're disrupting people's lives. Sometimes it's causes problems, and sometimes it takes years to resolve. You might start a website like me. You might go petition the FDA like Nick Eisel. You may go start protesting Parliament like Dr. Joe Rose is right now. She's on her way to, I forget which country she told me, but she's went to Malta recently too. There's all kinds of things you can do to assert what it is that you want to do with what you find. Can contact your family, build those relationships. Some people don't want to do anything, like your brother. He's afraid. He doesn't want to take any of those emotional risks. He doesn't want to feel the pain or take the risks. Maybe he doesn't have like an in-depth, maybe he doesn't think deep. I don't know. Maybe, everybody's different and everybody has different capacities for hardship and personal growth and introspection. And so to stage number 7, what's going to be my story or legacy? So yeah, once you've done stuff with what you found. So for me, like I've done a lot, interviews, TV shows, my website, podcast. I've building relationships with my biological family. I might change my name. Those are all things I'm doing. What's going to be my story? Because I have to tell people my story often when I do an interview with a journalist or even just somebody at work, my job, I tell them about it and then they're like, wow. And, you got to tell your story. And then everybody has their own like automatic response to hearing your story. Some people have more empathy than others and they listen better, and other people lack those emotional skills and intelligence and are more like inquisitive, like, well, why does it matter? Or why is he your father? He didn't raise you. Or was your dad that raised you like a bad father? Or, if it didn't happen, you wouldn't be alive. There's all these kind of automatic responses, and as you tell your story, you start to figure out what your responses are to all of those reactions. And so you can build your story over time. And so those are some examples. But then what's your legacy? So for me, I want my family, when I have all my kids and their kids and their kids, and I'm a great grandpa, and we've got 50 people in a picture one day, I want to be a Windler. I want to be a descendant of my family tree. And I want that to be known. I want my family to know where we come from. And part of that is your last name. I don't want to feel ashamed of my last name. I want to be proud of it when I speak it. I want to identify with it. And I really do identify with the name Windler, which is my biological surname. So at some point, I have a goal to change my surname, and as well as changing my whole family's name. And I also want my legacy to be this website, DonorChildren. I want to change the world. I want to create a place that can create legislative changes around the world. I want donor conceived people to have a voice and to be legitimate and validated. I want them to feel free and safe to speak and share their stories. And so yeah, your legacy is global. Like, what's your big legacy for the world? And what's your legacy for your life? So there's kind of two legacies. So do you have any, are you there yet, or you're not quite there yet, are you? Or what do you think?
Yeah, I think that I'm not quite there yet. I'm still stuck, as we talked about, on this step number 4 of what am I seeking. So, but I really appreciate this time with you to kind of work through these steps and think about, evaluate where I'm at on in the process, and I got to remind myself, to view it as a journey, as an adventure, and hopefully one day we will get to that 8th step, and we can really think about our legacy and all this.
Well, that was stage 7. So stage 8 is, how will I help others with what I now know? Which I kind of tied it into 7 a little bit, talking about like what I'm doing to help other people. But but basically, beyond what's your legacy globally for the world, how do you want your story to impact the world? How do you want your story to impact your friends and your family, and your descendants if you have children? And so beyond yourself, how will you help others with what you now know? And for me, having gone through all of these 8 stages and feeling like I have completed them, I do feel very comfortable talking through it all, because I don't feel the emotional turmoil like what you're feeling right now. I don't feel that anymore. I feel at peace. And I feel like I've walked through the whole journey, and because of that, I'm able to help people like you or others that are walking through it, and or haven't but might. And so yeah, everybody knows what I'm doing. I have donor children, and I like get to know members on a personal level from time to time when it happens, and helping people individually too. I started a counseling / DNA consultant service. If anybody wants to hire me, because I don't have infinite time. I'm a very busy father and engineer, DonorChildren founder, and real estate investor. And so I'm doing many things with my time, but I would be willing on a case-by-case basis to help, if you would like somebody to help you on a regular basis. So I'm asking $50 an hour for my time, and I will sit with you like I sat with Infinite and look at his DNA results. And I messaged with his cousins and built a family tree, and I can coach people through how to DNA test and how to do it the fastest way or the cheapest way, and be an emotional support as well, and I'll help you process like all these complicated family dynamics that Infinite and I are talking about. This is not a journey for the faint of heart, and I did it all by myself, but I sure would have been much better off, because I experienced a lot of pain and suffering and depression, and it took me into a really, really bad place. But thankfully I came out of it, and I got second chances, and I'm doing great now. But I hope not everybody goes through that alone like I did. I hope that people reach out, even if it's just an email. I'm happy to just, if anybody wants to email donorchildren@gmail.com, I will always respond. And don't think you can't reach out. And there's people on DonorChildren that you can connect with for support. And there's people on Facebook. The worldwide group is really good. And I don't know what else to say about that, but I thank you all for listening to our second podcast show. Is there anything else you wanted to say, Infinite, to close it up, or you think we're about good for this show?
No, I think that's good. And
Okay.
Thanks again for helping me through the process, whether it was dealing with my social family and learning how to validate myself. with them, or the process to go through DNA testing. I certainly appreciate it, and I enjoy our chats that we've been having bi-weekly, and I look forward to the next one, and also look forward to interviewing some of these really interesting people, hearing their interviews and their stories as well.
Sure, man. It was a pleasure and honor to help you, and it's been great adding you as a friend. So, all right, everybody. Well, thanks for taking time to watch. This was a very long episode. I'm going to make another podcast video just by myself and just do a quick summary of what the 8 stages towards donor-conceived self-actualization is, so that someone doesn't have to listen to 5 hours of Infinite and I talking to get it quickly. But I do think it's good content, hopefully, for you guys. And thanks again. We'll see you guys in a couple weeks.
Strangers for so long, tell me where I belong. I'm not gonna fall in line. No, I'm not gonna wait this right. Tried to let it go, but it numbs me not to know. Yeah, it numbs me, it haunts me in the mirrors, in the diaries, all the compliments, the accomplishments never weighed as much as the silence. Uncertainty for so long, but I will hold on. I'm not gonna fall in line. No, I'm not gonna wait this right. So familiar to look into the eye that look just